Good evening. How's everybody doing? It's Chris with Sidster Sensibilities coming at you again with some more information. I would like to discuss a little bit, especially for your new people or um, people that are just kind of wanting to do some changing or moving around, what the interview process kind of can entail and cannot entail. I think in a lot of factors is more important than what it does. We all know that with special needs, again, with multiple disability special needs, there's a lot of factors that come into play. But some people just don't realize how much there is. Again, we're thinking these cute Down syndrome kids that they just want to hug you and be your friend, or that child in a wheelchair that just comes to school every day with this huge smile on his face or her face, and you just never realize the amount of care, daily care in just getting them through the day that it takes. And the other thing about it is this, and I don't say this to scare people away from multiple disabilities. I'm saying this so that you have an idea, so that you don't get yourself in a position to where you had no idea that these things would be a factor. And they are, and they're real. One of the things that I always point out to new people that come in to help me in my classroom or cover my plan time, things such as that nature, that they don't realize, excuse me, is that level of care. And the best way that I can describe that is sitting in school meetings and listening to other teachers, such as our general ed teachers and things, discuss some of the factors that they have in their classroom that are irritating to them. And I think one of the biggest ones is we always hear a lot of complaining about the cell phones nowadays, and kids using their cell phones and not getting off of them. And even if it's the school policy, they're like jacking around with you and they won't give them up, and we have to write referrals and call home and craziness like that. Which again, for my classroom, usually doesn't happen because those pieces of technology are way too high for any of my children to really use, other than to play games and things like that. And most don't even have them. But here's my analogy to that. In the course of a day, if all I had to worry about in my classroom is a child being on their cell phone, I would be very thankful. Because honestly, in the course of a day, in a multiple disability classroom, somebody could lose their life. God honest truth, guys. And I don't think anybody ever really makes you aware of that. And the responsibility of being a multiple disability teacher, you have really got to be on it for some kids. Kids with seizure disorders, kids with brain function disorders, just your typical ADHD autistic kid that's vestibular and all over the classroom. And the next thing you know, they've whacked themselves into a wall and their skull's bleeding or something to that effect. Is that serious in our classrooms? And you're not going to go into an interview and have anybody tell you that, because they need the teachers and they don't want to scare you off. And I don't want to scare you off either, but I don't think it's okay for them to not release some of that information, because it is real and it is scary unless you're prepared. If you're prepared and you know just how much you have to watch these children, just how much you have to keep them safe, and how much you have to do for their daily living, it is so much easier to get it done, because not everybody can. And that was another thing that I had to, and still do, go back to quite a lot, When I first started in special education, I had a student that I would take to PE, and he would forever pull my shirt up in front of the class during PE. I got smart really quick and started wearing 2 shirts so that I wouldn't embarrass myself or the other kids. Again, we are talking middle school and high school. And so I did that. But there were other little things sometimes that I would go home and I'd be a little upset, but not terrible. And I'd say things to my kids, and they honestly wanted to know, Mom, how can you do this job? And my simple answer to them was, because I can. And there are a lot of people out there who can't. And you need to search down deep inside and figure out if you're one of those cans. The other thing too is the hygiene issue. Now, I've always been a big proponent of, I'm not ever going to ask my paras to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I do. And that includes changing diapers. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but changing diapers on adolescents, girls or boys, is no fun in any way, shape, or form. It's super messy, it's icky, it's just not fun, but it can be part of the job. So you have to be aware of the fact that that could be part of your wheelhouse. Feeding is another one. Oftentimes you have to assist these students with their daily meals. That means cutting them up. That means spoon feeding them. Sometimes that means mixing them in a blender. Sometimes it means getting a bottle prepared. And sometimes it means a G-tube. And you have to be prepared that any of those things could walk into your classroom at any time in a multiple disability classroom. We do not turn away kids because of what their needs are. We just don't. We work with them. Oftentimes, these students will drool constantly, make a mess, sneeze on you, rub their hands on your arms or your face, and they just don't know. They just don't know. And you, again, have to be prepared for those things, because that is not something they're going to tell you in an interview. They're going to tell you in an interview your class sizes are going to be smaller than typical classes because of the level of care, mainly. You will have to write IEPs. You will have to have contact with your gen ed teachers for those children that are in inclusive classrooms. You will have to have contact with parents. You will have to write IEPs. I may have already said that. They're going to give you the typical, the typical. The other thing too with our multiple disabilities children is there can always be, and sometimes are, some severe behavioral issues that go along with it that can be dangerous to yourself or others in the classroom, and you have to be prepared for that. Most districts have policies and procedures as to how to handle student who is acting out violently, how to keep the other kids in the classroom safe, hence the reason we have paras in our classrooms to help us with those things. So again, I've put some pretty heavy stuff out there in this little chat, but I feel it's very important because they are things they're not going to tell you about. There could be lifting, you know, you've got to lift these kids to get them on a changing table, or things like that if you're doing changing and stuff. So if you can't lift, there are Hoyer lifts and different apparatuses to help you, but even still, there's a lot of lifting, a lot of bending. It's a very, very physical job. It's not just standing in front of the classroom and teaching kids or saying, oh, hi, sweetheart, you're so cute today, or giving them hugs. Again, you got to stay away from that stuff. They're teenagers now. And the reality is it doesn't matter if they have a disability. Nature has a way. And so there are certain things that they still attribute to, and Their bodies are changing just like a normal teenager. So you really have to watch a lot of those things that you thought were okay to do in maybe elementary school and stuff, because it's just not appropriate anymore. Those hugs, we have students that come in from elementary school that want to sit on your lap, that, I mean, just, it's hard. You just can't do those things once they start into middle and upper grades, because they could get in a lot of trouble, grabbing onto the wrong person, or saying the wrong thing to the wrong person, or the wrong person approaching them, and they could be in very grave danger. So again, this has been a pretty heavy talk, but it's one I think you need to have, and you need to know about, because they don't put it out there for you. And if you're the type of person like I was and still am, that can deal with that after 21 years, then you are the kind of person we really need in multiple disability special ed. We are a dying breed, and the kids are not. So we have got to still keep coming into that classroom and keep helping those kids with the things they need, and encouraging them and inspiring them, and not just thinking it's going to be this cute, fluffy little classroom with all these sweet little handicapped kids. It's not. It's not. But it can be. And they will fill your heart so full that it just wants to explode some days, with the simplest things, such as being able to get in a gate trainer and walk down the hall when all they ever have had is a wheelchair. So remember those things also. There's a lot of joy in what we do every day. Have a good run. Chris from Sidster Sensibilities.